listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who, and today we're discussing the 7th Doctor story, Survival. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to get your very own Secrets of Doctor Who t-shirt or phone case or more by visiting sqpn.com/merch. Today I'm wearing my Secrets of Stargate shirt. You can see Father Cory on
Good
that.
taste. Good taste.
If you're watching the video. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called The Catholics of Oz. They just celebrated their 100th episode, so you should definitely check that out. That was a special episode. And you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Oz. And of course, please stick around to the very end of the show because we have more of your great listener feedback to share with you. So we are discussing the 7th Doctor's last TV story. With a little caveat in there. We could talk about that. It's not the last time we'll ever see him again. But it's the last regular story. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens?
This week, the 7th Doctor and Ace return to Ace's hometown of Perryvale. They find that lots of Ace's friends have mysteriously vanished. They've been whisked off to another world by Kitlings, small, creepy animatronic cat dolls with the power of interdimensional travel. The Kitlings take people to the home planet of the Cheetah people, who, despite being cat people, howl like dogs, ride horses, and sometimes also teleport to our world. But if you go to their world, you start turning into a cheetah person. And that's not only happening to Ace and her friends, it's also happened to the Master, who is struggling to control his new animal instincts. He eventually decides that he has control of them and elects to hunt the Doctor and destroy him. But the conflict between the cheetah people is literally tearing their planet apart. Eventually, the Master teleports the Doctor to the cheetah planet for a last battle, but the Doctor draws on the planet's power and starts to turn cheetah himself. The Doctor nearly kills the Master, but holds back his violence. He teleports back to Earth, and the planet proceeds to tear itself apart. The Doctor reunites with Ace, who has been purged of her cheetah influence, and the two of them stroll off to new, unseen adventures. The end.
All right. So, overall first impressions, Father Cory, since you've been away, I'd like to give you the first opportunity to give your first impression. What did you think of this one?
Well, this is a great way to come back to the final episode of Classic Who. This is one I've seen many times, and I've always kind of enjoyed it. I mean, it's interesting. We see Ace's hometown or home area where she's from, and we get to kind of get more of her background, more of kind of who. A little bit anyways. And you get the Master actually acting much more manipulative and dark, not quite as bombastic as the Ainley Master is known for being. And so that's kind of interesting. And then the idea of how the power of this planet kind of infects both the Master and eventually the Doctor and Ace, and kind of seeing how that plays out. I've always kind of enjoyed this one. I've always found it to be a good story. Kind of tragic, of course, because it was the last episode of Classic Who. That wasn't intended to be the last episode of Classic Who, but I've always enjoyed it.
Jimmy?
It's an enjoyable watch. It's only 3 episodes long, which is nice. I liked that. I hadn't remembered that, and so I was expecting, I'm watching episode 3 and I'm going, okay, there's another episode to go, and then all of a sudden, wait, we're ending. This is the famous ending, and it'd been a long time since I watched it, so I wasn't expecting that. It was a nice surprise. But in terms of the story itself, it's moody, it is brooding, it is atmospheric, it is ominous, and it just has a different feel. It's certainly nothing like the camp that you get in modern Who. This is much more serious in its tone, and I liked that. I thought that was effectively done. There's individual things to talk about in it, but I thought it was, it's not perfect and there are things I would change, but I thought it was remarkably effective, especially for television of the time.
Yeah, I'm tempted to start by saying I laughed, I cried, it was better than Cats, but
that's not saying much. But
anything is better than Cats. I don't know what people were thinking.
Poor T.S. Eliot. But regardless, it was interesting to see, for me to see how the classic Who ended its regular run. Obviously, we'll see Sylvester McCoy again, which we've already talked about in the 96 television movie and the American attempt to reboot. And
yeah, he's like the Doctor for the first third of that.
yeah. And then he shows up again in the end of the 13th Doctor's, like the mind palace thingy that she was going through. But really, this is the end of Classic Who for all intents and purposes. And so it was interesting to see how this unexpected ending of this show that had been on for, at that point, more than 25 years, right? I mean, that's, I forget which season exactly it was. And to just sort of abruptly bring it to a close. And as a story, I agree, Jimmy, it is very moody and atmospheric. In fact, that the first whole episode is kind of like, I don't know, it's like the town is so empty. Like, where is everybody? It's very ominous in a sense as they're walking through this suburb, essentially, where and there's nobody around. There's very few people, and also the fact that they filmed it entirely on for outdoor. It was no interior sets like on a soundstage. I mean, there were interiors, but no soundstage, and they didn't do the switching between film and videotape like they sometimes did in the era. It was all, I think it was all film. I think
Was it all film? Yeah,
It's all one or the other.
Yeah, so I don't know the technicalities of that, but so I felt like that gave it an interesting feel to it. And one of the things that kind of felt about this too with Ace, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more, is I really felt like Ace was coming into her own here. I mean, she was not the child essentially who started with the Seventh Doctor. She was feeling a little more grown up, a little more, not, as if anybody can be an equal of the Doctor, but as any companion can be, somewhat equal to the Doctor in many ways. So I thought it was kind of interesting. She was getting a little more agency and, leading her friends and that sort of thing. So I thought that was interesting as well. So that's impressions. One of the things I found interesting is they arrived on a Sunday, which at some point in New Who, and I couldn't remember which one who said this is, says, I never land on a Sunday. I skip Sundays because those are the most boring day of the week.
Yeah, could never get the hang of Sundays.
Right. And I gather maybe that was a reference back to this one because, they land on a Sunday because it's the Doctor acts very, very bored throughout the first episode. Like he just says,
he literally yawns. He literally yawns. He's so bored. Yeah.
It's kind of odd, his reaction to taking Ace home to her hometown.
Part of this is to show that Perivale, which is a suburb of London, it's like near Wembley Stadium. I'd never been to London. That's just Google Maps telling me this, but it's just a boring suburb town. There's nothing really going on. It's not a place where you go for entertainment. It's not a place you go for excitement. You live there, you go to work, and you go back. And that's what it's supposed to show.
We'd call it a bedroom community here in the States. Yeah.
At least that's Ace's perspective on it. Which is, typical young people very frequently feel there's nothing going on here and so forth. I want to get out of this, nothing town and so forth. And they kind of play on that. One of the things that I think contributes to the overall mood of this series is the Cheetah Planet, which is filmed entirely like in a rock quarry. Or sand pit, and I thought it was fitting, even though this wasn't intended to be the last episode of the series, that Doctor Who returns to its origins by finishing in a rock quarry. But they've tricked it out with the Paintbox software of the time, and they're making much better use of it than they did in the Sixth Doctor's time. If you remember Mind Warp, where the Doctor and Perry go to this planet, the Sixth Doctor and Perry go to this planet, and they've just gone Paintbox crazy. And it's like, okay, this is clearly video editing, and they're not trying to hide it. It's just blam, change, that Ali Brosh clean all the things meme. It's like, do all the colors. And And in this, it's more restrained. They may have done a little overall color, changing color correction for the main body of what you see on screen, but where they're really doing it is in the sky. They give the cheetah planet this kind of reddish sky. It's not bright red, but it's got red elements in the sky. They also have added extra moons in the sky, and they have these gas geysers that are going off in the back. They never make anything of them, but you can see these, volcanic-like peaks that are spewing gas up into the air, and there are a number of those, and it helps create an effective alien environment. Yep. And then at the end, when the Doctor is confronting the Master and the planet is starting to tear itself apart, they have cracks in the ground open up, and there's water in them, and the water looks like it's burning because of the Paintbox Pro, and I thought it was very visually effective.
Yeah. The gas geysers really show that the planet is falling apart. That it's kind of its last gasp before it really breaks apart. That this isn't a healthy planet anymore.
Right.
So
and at the
really
end,
does show that showing without telling. They do say that it's breaking apart, but that really shows it kind of throughout.
Right. The rock quarry is to Doctor Who as Vasquez Rocks outside of Los Angeles is the Star Trek. It's just one of those things, or for every Hollywood TV show, those hills, those barren hills outside of LA that you always see, and that's the sort of thing, and they have to substitute for every location around the world. Our heroes are in Afghanistan. Oh, look, there's those same hills we saw in Los Angeles. So the rock quarries is a very key aspect of Doctor Who's location shooting.
One of the interesting behind-the-scenes tidbits on this story is it had a number of different working titles. They ended up calling it Survival, which is, I guess, an ironic name given the series didn't survive this story. But they they do talk about survival of the fittest in this, but I'm not sure that it's the best name. I actually like one of the other names they considered for this, which was Cat Flap. Because a cat flap is it's the equivalent of a doggy door. It's what your cat uses to get in and out of your house, by going through a little flap on a door in a wall. And since the cat people in this cross back and forth between their world and ours, it's like they've got a teleportational cat flap.
Yeah, in fact, the Doctor says that, uses that phrase at some point. There is a lot of talk of survival of the fittest in unconnected context in the second episode, I noticed.
Survival of the fittest, law of the jungle, that kind of conversation, especially that the Sergeant Patterson, he really talks a lot about that until he gets confronted with actual survival issues, then he freaks out. But Sergeant Patterson he's a self-defense instructor that is very proud of all the survival training he's had and that he's trying to give to young people. And he's a bit of a tin-pot dictator. He's kind of, haughty and superior, and he's a stereotype. But what I find interesting is the way the Doctor treats him, because the Doctor, if this was the 13th Doctor, she would be preaching at him and humiliating him. And the 7th Doctor doesn't do that. He largely ignores him, tolerates him, does not humiliate him. And when they get into trouble on the cheetah planet, like at one point the cheetahs are about to tear apart and eat Sergeant Patterson, the Doctor had, without blinking an eye, just saves him. He tries a couple of different tricks. They don't work. He gets a horse. He yanks Patterson up onto the horse and they ride off. The most the Doctor does is say the equivalent of, "Oh, shut up." But that's it. And he also has a very interesting thing that he does at one point as part of the survival message that Patterson is giving to young people at the youth center. He's telling them a finger can be a deadly weapon, just one finger. And that's a setup. You don't know it at the time, but that's a setup, because later, as the Doctor's trying to catch a kitling,
one of these black cats that's roaming the neighborhood and teleporting people away. As he's trying to catch him, Patterson is interfering with him and is like going to take him into custody because there have been neighborhood watch complaints about the doctor lurking around people's houses and stuff. The doctor just takes his finger, presses it into Patterson's forehead, and telepathically knocks him unconscious. He does a telepathic assault on him, and then he looks at his finger and says, a finger can be a deadly weapon.
Yeah. Patterson, I guess he's like Territorial Army, which is a rough equivalent of like our National Guard. So he's sort of a reserve, or but he takes it very seriously and is always in his camouflage uniform. And so you mentioned a stereotype.
I just love that telepathic assault, though. We almost never get to see the doctor do stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. Did it seem odd to anyone else that Ace's complete lack of interest in seeing family when she arrives?
The only family we know that she's got is her mom, and she hates her.
Yeah. But I thought some of that got fixed in the Curse of Fenric.
A little bit, but I could imagine that doesn't mean she still wants to see her family.
Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, I suppose there's still going to be feelings don't go away immediately. So okay, that makes some sense. And like a teenager, she wants to see her friends. And
one of the things they do though in this is they kind of hold Ace a little responsible on family issues, because her friends, point and Sergeant Patterson point out, your mom thought you're dead. She's issued a missing persons report on you, and all you had to do, in fact, Patterson really totally calls her out on it, says all you have to do is give her a phone call at some point. You've let her think you're dead all this time. It would have cost you 10p to call your mom and say, I'm alive.
Right. Yep. Yeah, back in the day, kids, you could put a coin, a dime, in something called the payphone,
which was a box on a wall.
Just randomly out in public, and then you could make phone calls.
And it's even cheaper now because we all have devices in our pockets that do the same thing.
I know, and the
call is free.
And the doctor can program them to call you from any place in time and space.
That wasn't part of the show yet, though.
No. Yeah. So, and you mentioned how the master. Oh yeah.
Forgive me. By the way, I was a little surprised. Now, this word doesn't mean anything in American English, so I'll say it, but it means something in British English. What Sergeant Patterson says to Ace is, your mom had you listed as a missing person. You don't even give a toss, do you? And I was surprised to hear the word toss on a family show in Britain, because it means an act of self-gratification, and to put it delicately. And it's like, wow, I wasn't expecting to hear that. How did that get past the censors? Was that just something that the actor playing Patterson accidentally ad-libbed or something, and it got passed through, or what? Because I'm not accustomed to hearing such language on Doctor Who.
It would be the equivalent of hearing "you don't give an F-bomb." I mean, that's really the equivalent it would be.
I suppose
I don't know about the force. I mean, they're both
but
references.
Still be the same thing. Yeah,
they're
same idea.
They're references to sexual acts, but I gather that toss does not have the force that the F word historically has had. But it's still, I mean, wow, I wasn't expecting that.
I guess I'm imagining this was by the time this aired, they knew, or they were in editing, they knew the show was done. So someone probably just didn't care and let it go.
You could say they didn't give one of those either, whether or not the censors liked it.
That's right. So I was going to mention the appearance of Anthony Ainley as the Master, the last gasp of Anthony Ainley's Master, the last time he appears, although he has not shown up in 3 seasons since the trial of a Time Lord in the Sixth Doctor. There's been no Master in the Seventh Doctor's time at all till this very final chance. I thought that was interesting.
In fact, Ace has to ask who's the Master, and the Doctor says he's an evil genius, one of my old enemies, and they move on. That's because Ace has never met him before. Right. Anthony Ainley also is visibly older in this. His hair hasn't changed color, but his face shape is different. And his skin looks different. He looks visibly older than he did in his last appearance.
Yeah. And I gather from what I was reading, this is more the type of Master that Anthony Ainley wanted to play, little more understated than they wrote him on the Sixth Doctor's time, particularly, which is interesting. It feels a lot more like the Roger Delgado Master. Less scene chewing, shall we say?
Not so much of the mustache twirling type Master that he usually is.
Yeah.
He also, it's nice to see the Master just trying to survive for once. He's not trying, and eventually trying to kill the Doctor, but he's not trying to take over the world here. He's not he's not allied himself with the Cheetah people and is going to use them to take over the world or anything like that. He's just fallen in with them somehow, and he's currently trying to dominate the Cheetah people and use them, but he needs help to get back to Earth, presumably where his TARDIS is. And he asks the Doctor for help and is very frank about it. Just says, "I need your help."
In the Cheetah people are interesting, by the way. They're not simply animalistic people. They've kind of developed a kind of anthropology, I suppose. I don't know of them, where they're not just mindless hunters. They hunt for the joy of it. They hunt, when you run, that is, it kind of elicits the idea of cats who are all about playing with their prey, as opposed to just merely being, hunt and tear apart and eat and then move on. And so you kind of get that from the cheetahs a little bit.
Yeah, you get the pleasure of hunting, the pleasure of feeling the wind and smelling the prey and all this stuff, the kind of like we would describe, someone who really loves to cook. Like the act of cooking isn't just to produce nourishment. It's the joy of the ingredients and combining everything and just that whole experience of it.
Yeah.
It's because the Cheetah people play with their food that the Doctor is able to save Patterson, because they don't immediately kill him. They're playing with him first. And that gives the Doctor time. He tries to distract them. He gets some objects and tries to juggle them, like you could with a cat, and he tries throwing them, and the Master says, "Sorry, they're not that easily distracted once they're on the hunt."
Right.
But the Master characterizes them, as they're playing with their food, as a fundamentally fun-loving race. They also are talking a bunch, and there's one of them whose name we eventually learn is Kara, who she and Ace kind of become friends, and during this phase, Ace has been infected and is going back and forth between being cheetah-like and being human, and she moves back and forth between the two, and Kara and Ace are talking about, Kara especially is talking to Ace about feeling like you could run forever on the hunt and stuff like that, and feel the grass beneath your feet and how great all that is. And then, why are you riding horses while you're hunting?
Yes. Well, it's like Planet of the Apes. The gorillas riding the horses.
Yeah, well, that's fine. It's a nice image, but it's like, then why are you going on about running forever if you're just, you should be going on about riding forever.
By the way, Kara is played by Bernice Summerfield, who shows up in other roles in
Lisa Bowerman, who played
Lisa Bowerman.
Yeah, in Big Finish, and I think just audio, right? Big Finish.
Yes. Well, I think there have been like Bernice Summerfield comics and stuff, but yeah.
Okay.
She voices actually quite a few characters in Big Finish.
Right. The character's Bernice Summerfield, but you're right. You got the actress's name. So that was interesting. Apparently, when this was being written, the writer did not envision the cheetah people to have quite so much makeup. and thought that they should have much more expressiveness in their faces. The actors should be able to express them. And so a lot of the nuance that she was hoping for got lost in the filming. And I think, in fact, I think at one point she thought that there should be more relationship between Kara and Ace than there was.
She initially wanted them to have like yellow colored eyes and fangs and a little bit of like grease paint face makeup with cheetah spots. But instead they gave them full face, layers of stuff with fur on top of it. And so their facial expressions get lost.
Apparently it was so hot at times in the filming that one of the extras stripped off the costume and walked off the set. She was just done, which is kind of amusing to think about.
Wouldn't doubt that looked uncomfortable because they're basically wearing a mascot layers of clothing and fake fur.
Yeah, full body fur coat in a summer day. So one of the things that's interesting is the doctor, like when they first show up in Perivale, he does seem bored, as we mentioned, but pretty quickly he seems to figure out what's going on. We're not explained why or how he knows, but he seems to quickly figure out the Kitlings and the cheetah people and why people are going missing. Doesn't, of course, because the doctor doesn't say anything to anyone exactly what's going on, but he starts kind of hunting the Kitlings. And I thought that was an interesting subtlety that they just have him kind of start doing this thing, because the doctor's always sort of looking for what's below the surface of things, I guess.
It's nice. It's kind of like when you watch Mission Impossible, the TV show. There are long stretches of that where you don't have dialogue explaining what's happening. You're just watching the Mission Impossible team putting a plan into action, and you got to figure out what they're doing as you see them do it. And it's not overly explained to you. And that's like what the doctor's doing in the first episode of this. He realizes what the Kitlings are somehow. They look like black cats. In fact, they look like creepy hissing black cat dolls, because it is an animatronic. They do use an actual live black cat for a handful of shots, but mostly it's animatronic. And like when they need the Kitling to walk, they use a real cat.
Right.
But whenever we have close-ups, of it looking around with sinister eyes and hissing at people and stuff like that, or just hissing at the air for the fun of it.
Yeah.
It's clear that it's a doll. And they had apparently hired a guy to do the animatronics who had previously done what was regarded as a very successful animatronic dog on another show. It was called I something or other. And they said that this was not as well realized because cats are smaller, and that means the animatronics couldn't work the same way.
Right.
And maybe that's true, but I went and looked up an episode of this other TV show on YouTube and watched it, and I saw the animatronic dog, and it's like, it's not that great. The cat was just as good as this. Partly the fact that the cats are jet black helps. Because that field of blackness, all you really see is the silhouette of it and its eyes and teeth and the interior of its mouth. You don't have to worry too much about, like, if this were a light colored cat, you could see all the folds of its skin and think about, are those folds realistic or not? But here you just see it's a jet black silhouette with eyes and a mouth. One of the places, though, that I think it doesn't work completely well is they have it lift its upper lip sometimes, and it's clear that they've just like got a cord that pulls up the center of its lip. And that doesn't look realistic, but overall it was very impressive.
Well, there's one scene where you can definitely tell the difference, where Ace picks up the cat, and of course she's picking up an actual cat, and then the next scene you see her petting the animatronic cat. And it's very clearly a difference, I mean that definitely was kind of a failed scene there for that.
It looks no better than the black cat that they had on Bewitched back in the late 60s, early 70s, that time period. It doesn't seem any better than the cat from that.
20 years difference, and it really didn't make that, they really didn't change anything.
Well, and then you look at what they've done in the nearly 40 years since, the 30-something years since, with Grogu on, The Mandalorian, which is a puppet, and similarly, it's amazing to see where we've come with that stuff.
I wonder if they would have been better off with doing a puppet versus the animatronic. If it would have
someone
looked
inside
better.
Yeah.
Because I mean, by the late 80s, puppet technology had gotten so much better. I mean, thanks to Jim Henson largely, but.
Yeah. I mean, it's nowhere near as bad as Chameleon was, but
By the way, we should also mention, just to explain what kittlings are. The doctor describes them as the feline equivalent of vultures. And so, how vultures circle meat, and then people or other creatures can see the vultures and move to where they are and eat the meat. The kittlings do something similar. They transport between our world and the cheetah planet, and they find victims for the cheetah people to eat and teleport them back to the cheetah planet. And then the cheetah people kill them, and the kittlings get to eat the meat.
Right. They have a sort of symbiotic relationship. And we're told that because they have this link to the planet, they can always go back to it. They can always transport back to it. And this is what the master wants to use in order to get off the cheetah planet, by having a human brought there and turn, which eventually happens to Ace's friend Midge. And
Midge is such a strange name for a guy. I'm used to that being a female name.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's a nickname or something, but it doesn't say.
Maybe he was small as a kid and they called him Midge for midget or something. But in any case, he kind of rides him back through the portal, where he becomes suave, cool dude with the glasses and the long coat, the leather coat or something like that. As they go
Neo.
Yes, right, and recruit the other young men at the youth center to join the cat gang or something. I don't know. It was kind of a weird.
The plan falls apart before it really comes together.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting about this is, if you watch a lot of on-screen... Now, one of the things I liked about this is there's a good bit of conflict. There is running and hand-to-hand fighting and stuff, but there's no blasters in this. No. There's no guns. This is unarmed physical combat. For the most part. I mean, occasionally someone picks up a tooth and stabs somebody with it, but this is... And the
occasional exploding motorcycles.
Well, we can get to the motorcycle chicken gang. But this is overwhelmingly unarmed combat. And one of the things you sometimes see in unarmed combat on television is ridiculous moves that nobody would ever make in real life. You see Jim Kirk doing weird flips and
double chop,
and
the two-headed chop that's really a thing. The smashing the fist down, that's really a thing.
And on Next Gen, you see Riker or LaForge doing a roll out of nowhere, and it's like, how is that going to help you? And Ace gets to do something similarly stupid in this when she's in a park on Earth. And Kara appears on a horse and is chasing her. And this is the first time that Ace has encountered Kara. She doesn't know what she is. They're not friends. She's running away from this cheetah person on horseback that's chasing her. And since they're in a park, they have all this playground equipment, like little bitty slides, and not big ones, but little bitty slides. And they have multiple ones, and Ace will run to a slide, climb up the slide, slide down the slide, run to the next slide, climb up it, slide down it, and meanwhile Kara is following her on the horse, and it's like, Ace, what do you think you're doing? This is not taking shelter. Why are you suddenly sliding down all these slides? If you the most, I mean, you could either get under one of the slides if you wanted to try to take shelter, or you could climb up it and stay there. Yeah. But just running to a slide, climbing up, sliding down, and going to the next one is just wasting your time. It's not, you're not getting any shelter. You could better spend that time running away.
Yeah.
She was better at running away than pretty much everyone else. I have to give her that. Yeah. She lasted longer, although everyone, this is the other thing, everyone falls. Like, why does everyone that gets chased by Kara, what's that?
You always got a trip. You always got a trip. I mean, that's
you always
that's
get a trip over your own
rule.
feet. It is the being chased rule of movies and TV.
At least Ace figures out, hey, I can go into that, the climbing dome, climbing jungle gym dome, and at least I can have a little bit of shelter there.
Stay there till the doctor comes. But yeah.
one thing though, tying to, I think you mentioned, Dom, earlier about how Ace is kind of coming into her own, becoming more mature, is she has to resist her temptation to fight. Mm-hmm. And there actually that scene is, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to do this. She wants to attack. She wants to fight back, but she's having to resist that because she knows, as the doctor told her, if she fights, she will become more and more like the cheetah people.
Right. And there's another scene similar to that earlier on the Cheetah Planet where the doctor knows that the cheetah, because he knows about the cheetah people, he knows if you run, they will attack you. But they will largely otherwise leave you alone unless they're hungry. Mm-hmm. And he's with this group of Earthlings, and he keeps yelling for everybody, stand still, do not run, do not fight. And nobody listens to him, or very few people listen to him, and it brings about exactly the battle they could have avoided.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's kind of a comical scene because he's standing there and you see people crossing over back and forth and back and forth. Eventually he takes his umbrella, trips one of the cheetah people and kind of tips his hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny. The humans' inability to control their fight or flight instinct. they just cannot stop themselves. Oh man. So,
I want to know what's up with the wolf howl sound effect, because that's a wolf howl sound effect that the cheetah people are using.
Yeah, roar like a lion or something, or do a cheetah scream. But the wolf howl.
They rated the BBC Sound Archive, and that's the one they picked apparently.
Yeah, the sound editor was like, whatever, just pick one. We're done after this. We're gonna have to get new jobs after this, so just pick one. So let's talk about the jousting on the motorcycle back. The doctor has to he faces down with Midge for some reason.
They have a game of chicken on motorcycles, which make a remarkably large explosion that no Act 2 motorcycles would actually do.
No.
I mean, maybe they were packed with TNT. I don't know. Yeah. The doctor survives it quite handily, actually. Was just kind of thrown quite far from it and lands in a rubbish tip. And
actually, this was originally going to be in a warehouse, and that would explain the couch that he lands on. But now it's just a rubbish couch that someone has dumped.
Dumped at the park.
And he ends up face in the bags, and all you see is his backside and his legs.
Right. The undignified. It does kill Midge, which or mostly actually, he
survives briefly.
He survives, but the master kind of like, oh, you've failed, so therefore, and sort of disposes of him there, and then that's when the doctor has to go, confront the master in Cheetah World and resist the temptation to kill him. Like, he also has to fight off the kill instinct, because he's also turning to Cheetah, and then they end up back. And actually, is it Kara that dies?
Yes.
In there too? Yeah.
The master kills Kara with he kind of goads her a little bit. So Kara shows up on Earth again, and Ace is there to witness all this. And the master is like, you can't hurt me. I'm invincible. You're not going to hurt me. I can control you, blah, blah, blah. And she says, do you bleed? And he says, and he doesn't really say anything, but she says, "As long as you bleed, I can hurt you."
Yeah.
And she attacks him, and he stabs her with a giant tooth. And she then dies in front of Ace, and Ace is all broken up because at this point they're friends, and all of a sudden Kara is human again.
Yeah.
So it's clearly the cheetah. She was one of the cheetah people who had gone full cheetah, but was originally from Earth.
Right.
Okay. That's what that was. Because I was like, are all the cheetah people originally human, or
They don't say. They don't say, but it sounds like they're. I mean, it could. Well, okay. The Master originally refers to some people on the Cheetah planet who built ruins, or built buildings that are now ruins, and I think he says they designed the Kitlings. But this planet has this influence on whoever goes there. So I think the implication from the Master is those people are extinct. So I think the implication is that all of the cheetah people now are imports from elsewhere.
Right. Okay. Imports by the Kitlings.
Yeah. If you don't get eaten, you end up becoming a cheetah person.
Right.
Okay. And then yes, I do like the fact that the Doctor catches the Master trying to pick the lock of the TARDIS, and very casually, they end up. And that's when they end up going back to the cheetah planet. And he leaves the Master there, and the Master, of course, always finds a way off the planet, and so that's presumed.
By the 1996 TV movie, because that movie begins with him being executed by the Daleks.
Right. And has already a new regeneration of the Master, by the way, right?
Yep.
Arguably, they hired someone who looks very much like Anthony Ainley in the makeup they put him in.
Yeah.
You could argue whether you only really get a good look at him in publicity stills. But if you go on TARDIS Wiki, you can look at pictures of him, and then he becomes the Eric Roberts Master.
Yes.
Yeah, because in the movie itself, you only see him like the slits of the light on the eyes, and the eyes are kind of the cat type eyes. And
sure, right. That's
very
true.
brief.
So maybe
very
it is
brief
the same
for about 10 seconds.
He was going to do more. It was originally the Master who did the opening monologue in the 1996 TV movie, but they switched it to the Doctor or the Daleks or something.
Yeah. And then, so as we end, it's the Doctor and Ace kind of walking off from the park, walking to the TARDIS, and once the John Nathan Turner, I think it was, right, who's still running things at this time. Once he knew that the show had been canceled, he had Sylvester McCoy come back in and record a voiceover to sort of give a little sense of closure for the show.
And it's effective. It's a short voiceover, but the Doctor is walking with his arm around Ace, and in voiceover we hear him say, "There are worlds out there where the sky is burning, where the sea's asleep and the rivers dream. People made of smoke and cities made of song. Somewhere there's danger, somewhere there's injustice, and somewhere else the tea's getting cold. Come on, Ace, we've got work to do." And I think that's fitting. That's nice.
Yeah, it kind of shows that even though the series is canceled, it's continuing. They're still over continue, which of course we do see. We see Big Finish, we see the TV movie, we see, eventually, of course, the 2005 revival.
Yeah.
Yep. Books and comics and stuff.
I was going to say the series is continuing in the Virgin New Adventures Doctor Who novels, available at your nearest newsstand reseller.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it is sad that something that had gone on for so long kind of just got a very little send off, just kind of canceled. And I know, we've talked before about how often the show came so close to not coming back after the end of one series after another. So I suppose it wasn't.
Even in the New Who era, it almost ended after David Tennant. It almost I believe, almost ended after Stephen Moffat, and it almost ended again after Chris Chibnall.
Right. It's just something that keeps it going, and for that I'm grateful.
And there were revival movements between even after this was, right after this. I mean, there were people that were pushing for it. There were groups that were trying to get it going. The 96 movie wasn't the only attempt to get things going. That's the only thing that actually got filmed, but and then all the way up to 2005. So I mean, it's not like it was forgotten. The BBC probably wanted it to be forgotten for a while, but it never did really get forgotten. It's just it went on a very long hiatus.
Very long. I mean, that's 89 to 2005 is, 16 years. That's quite a long time for something to come back after all that time, even with a TV movie in the middle and the other materials. It's kind of fascinating to see. I mean, the only thing that's somewhat similar is Star Trek from the original series to TNG. But even then, it was a different series. It was a different crew, a different ship. This is sort of...
Well, that was true of Doctor Who as well. It's a new crew. It's, not the same actors.
That's true. Different guy in the role. Different. Even the TARDIS itself was very different.
And different companions, and
yeah. Yep. All right. Anything else to say about this story, Father Cory?
Nothing else here.
Jimmy?
So I think it would have benefited if they had explored why the planet is being destroyed more. They say it's because when the cheetah people fight each other, it harms the planet, but why? This is just kind of magical. Also, one thing I really liked is, as part of this is a seduction thing where Ace is as she's making the transition to becoming a cheetah person, she's being seduced by the idea of being a cheetah person. She's experiencing what it would be in her mind, what it would be like to have the thrill of the hunt and stuff like that. And she's going off with Kara on a hunt, it would seem. And they run across some meat, and they've made it, you can see a rib cage, and it's clear this ain't a human rib cage. This is something else, but which is good, because otherwise it would be even ickier than it is. But they have this moment where Ace is conflicted about what she's becoming, and she says to Kara as they're looking at this, I mean, you kill people, you eat people, which is a horrifying realization. And then she says, would you eat me? And Kara does not say no. Instead, she starts, she's like, well, there's meat here, I don't need to. But she doesn't say no, I would never eat you. She instead starts talking about how much fun you'd be to hunt because you'd be a worthy adversary. And
not reassuring.
It's like, how fast can you run? And Ace says fast enough, and it's like, oh wow, what a great hunt that would be.
Right.
And I like that they have that moment of horrification in the middle of the seduction of becoming a cheetah person. It's like, wait, this isn't all running forever and hunting and how fun that is. It's like, what are you hunting? You kill and eat people. So I thought that was well done. And I like how the doctor then shows up and he's calling for Ace. He doesn't run to her and shake her shoulders or anything like that. He just says, Ace, you can come back and come with me. And she's looking back and forth between Kara and the doctor. And as she does that, she starts to look less like a cheetah, and suddenly her eyes are back to being human eyes. And I thought that was nicely done.
Very good. All right. So, and that does it for the Seventh Doctor. We will, of course, talk more about the Seventh Doctor in Big Finish and other things like that. But
he's got great Big Finish adventures.
Yeah. But for televised Seventh Doctor, that is the end. So I promised some feedback, and we've got some listener feedback from way back, episode 300, when we did our Ranking the Companions. And Rope Drink wrote on our YouTube channel, nice to see some love for Dorothy Ace McShane. It was great to see her once more in Power of the Doctor, along with the Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. I've always regarded them as the best overall TARDIS team, mostly thanks to their contrasting dynamic and great chemistry. They're a barrel of fun and play off each other so well. The anti-violence manipulator with his explosive teenage rebel student who care for each other, but are total opposites and no stranger to clashing with one another. So.
I think that the Ace is one of the best companions. I like Ace a lot. I like her partnership with the Seventh Doctor. I also like the team of the Second Doctor and Jamie, and I like the Fourth Doctor and Leela. I tend to. There are other companions that are fine, and some of them even good. But I think the best companions, the ones that I most enjoy watching, are Jamie, Leela, and Ace. And I think it's partly because all three of them are not pacifists. And are willing to do things the Doctor wouldn't, and they are able to have some interesting relationships. Jamie's is more comedic. Leela's is more protective, and she's more of a student. She's an Eliza Doolittle character, but she's more protective. It's like, if the Doctor's not going to defend him, I will. And Ace is also has a bit of a student relationship, not as much as Leela, but is quite willing, like Leela and Jamie, to use violence. And the Doctor can use that, but also restrain it. And I find each of those pairings has an interesting dynamic.
Greatest line from the Seventh Doctor and Ace: "Give me so that nitrogen you're not carrying."
Yeah.
Remembrance of the Daleks.
I felt like Ace and the Seventh Doctor were more father-daughter, even in some ways. Yeah,
I'm kind of biased because this is when these episodes were being aired. Was when I was first watching Classic Who, and I was much younger. I was teenage or a little bit younger than that, and I remember when they announced on our PBS station that Doctor Who had been canceled, because we would get the episodes, I think, like a year behind. So like when this aired, when Survival aired in Great Britain, we were, the season before is what we were watching, so it was, they had, they announced it that it had been canceled, but that we would get the new episodes and all that. But, so I'm kind of a little biased there that Ace was kind of the first companion I really kind of grew up with, if you will, because we would watch it more or less concurrent or fairly close to when it showed in Great Britain versus like Leela or Jamie or somebody like that.
Right. And being a teenager and Ace being a teenager, I'm sure that made that connection as well.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I may or may not had a crush on her at some point.
I didn't get to see these episodes when I was younger. I saw the Fourth Doctor through the Fifth Doctor on my local PBS, which was like phase shifted by a year or something, just like you, Father. And then something happened. I don't know if it's just my life got busy, or because I was heading into college, or if I think the local PBS wasn't getting it anymore after a certain time. And I don't really remember I didn't see the Sixth and the Seventh Doctor. I read comic books, and so I'd be in comic book shops, and I would see photographs of the Sixth and Seventh Doctor and think, oh, that looks interesting. And I was not horrified by the Sixth Doctor's costume. I thought it's like, well, just another eccentric Doctor Who costume. And then I started seeing photographs of Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor, and it's like, oh, well, that looks interesting. And I wanted to see their stories, but they just weren't available to me at the time.
I've mentioned before that the only time I saw any Doctor Who is I saw part of a Fourth Doctor story once, and I was confused. And I would love to know, like, I have an image of it in my mind of the scene. I have no idea which story it was. Like, I'd be curious to see.
I hope we find it. You'll be able to remember what it is. It's like, that's the scene. And it's probably gonna be like one of the more bizarre Fourth Doctor episodes, anyways.
Probably. There was a robot in it of some sort, I think, and it was an interior. But nevertheless,
half the Fourth Doctor episodes. But
exactly. Nevertheless, there was always this confusion for me about how they kept changing the actor and that sort of stuff. And so I do kind of wish I had seen these back in the day when they were airing as they came out, more or less. And it is to my regret that I only came to Doctor Who very late in life. So, but I'm glad we've made our way through many of them already. All right. So thank you again, Rope Drink, for your feedback. We really appreciate it. And we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Michael F., Jonathan R., Father Andrew A., Raymond L., and Debbie A. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Zyman Yannick, who edited this episode for us. So that's it from us for this time. What did you think of this Seventh Doctor story, Survival? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch the Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, and we'll be back next time when we're discussing the Zygon Inversion, the 12th Doctor story. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Dom.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, I don't have to outrun the lion, I just have to outrun you.